Just about time for the Sooners to head on up to Morgantown for a game that Oklahoma needs to win. We turn to the expert to get us broken down on what's going on with West Virginia. We welcome Josh Neighbors to the show on this edition of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Josh Helmer here with you of The Ref and obviously Locked On Sooners. We welcome in Josh Neighbors of Locked On Big 12, Sirius XM Big 12 today as well. Josh, well, first off, let me tell everybody, thank you for making Locked On Sooners and Locked On Big 12 your first, your second, your first listen every single day, your team every day right here on the Locked On Network. Josh, what's up, man? Welcome to the show.
We're getting down to it. It's crazy how fast the season goes by. I mean, we ripped through it. It's like we kind of get in this week-to-week rhythm and grind. And I know for Sooners fans, it's been an especially long season. So you guys probably don't feel like I do, but we only got 3 games left. We have 3 regular season games left, which is crazy. We're 75% of the way there for most of these teams. So it's nuts.
So you probably, Josh, had a little bit different perspective than myself or John or those of us that have been indoctrinated into everything Oklahoma Sooners, right? You had a little bit more big picture view. And quite frankly, now that we look back on the way this season has played out, probably a more realistic view about the Oklahoma Sooners and Brent Venables for year one. I still, for me, it's hard for me to separate that this hasn't been disappointing on several fronts for Oklahoma. But where are you at with year one with Brent Venables with Oklahoma? What you've seen so far? Where are just your general thoughts at with Oklahoma?
Yeah, I mean, it felt like the line of demarcation for them was that Nebraska game, right? I know Nebraska's not very good, but you watch that game and you see, after that first drive, how good their offense was and how good their defense was and how dominant they were. And it felt like they were kind of on the right path at that point in time. And then they hit conference play and things got really bad in a hurry, right? That Kansas State game was close, but we'd seen that before. Then the TCU game just got absolutely sideways so fast. And then the Texas game, obviously, too. And, I did not expect this. I was pretty high on Oklahoma coming into the year. I thought their schedule was pretty easy. I thought that was the one nice thing they had was the schedule broke pretty favorably for them. And things just got off to a really weird start. Their defense has just been so dreadful. It's crazy to think too, a Brent Venables defense could be this bad, but and I think there's a combination of reasons for that, as a lot of Oklahoma fans know, but that's what sticks out to me. The offense, it's been inconsistent. I know Dylan Gabriel injury was bad. I think that also exposed how poorly prepared they were at quarterback for having, a backup go, which I thought was really inexcusable, honestly, considering how good the backups in this conference have been. I mean, Oklahoma is supposed to be the big dog and there's no backup plan. There's backup plans everywhere else except for OU. I think it's just been a combination of things. And so they're still in a good position. I actually think they've got a good chance to win all of their remaining games, but it's just been really up and down for them. And, last week was kind of a show and tell week with 2 teams playing really well. Oklahoma turns the ball over and can't stop the run at all, and they lose that game to Baylor at home. So it's been a disappointing season for sure. But once again, we've seen year ones go worse for coaches, and we've seen year twos go better for coaches. So, it's not always going to be automatic success everywhere you go for a first-time coach.
I agree with a lot of what you said. I mean, you're preaching to the choir for Oklahoma fans.
Sure.
That Red River game was just nightmarish for OU fans. The fact that, look, you could be that wildly unprepared with a backup quarterback. I mean, look, we get it. The Dylan Gabriel situation was not good. That was not an easy situation for Oklahoma, but to look that inept had Sooner fans just ripping their hair out. So, okay, from the negative maybe to a little more positive with Oklahoma, before we just dive in completely to what you've seen from West Virginia and the type of challenge that the Mountaineers will present for Oklahoma. I mean, paint me a positive picture, right? I mean, look, Oklahoma's lost 4 games, and in Norman, Oklahoma, people around here, myself included, not used to that with the Oklahoma Sooners, right? So paint me a positive picture. Oklahoma wins out the rest of the season, wins a bowl game. why be optimistic right now with Oklahoma?
Well, for the remaining schedule piece of this, I mean, think about what's left for them. They've got this game this weekend at West Virginia. They've got Oklahoma State at home for Bedlam. And I mean, as bad as OU has been, Oklahoma State is almost like checked out of the season. And I mean, it just shows you like they were so reliant on Spencer Sanders. They were so reliant on him as just not going well. Talk about, team not prepared for the backup either. Good Lord. Oklahoma State is in that category too. And then they have Texas Tech, and Tech is really just back and forth right now in their quarterback situation. I mean, they cannot take care of the football at all right now. So if OU can generate some momentum going into that final game of the season, I mean, there is a case to be made that OU could end up at what it would be at the end of the year, 8-4. So it's there, it's available, but they're going to have to play better for that to happen. I think the effort they had last week could actually, and I know it wasn't good, it could actually win some of the games. Like against Oklahoma State, they might actually win the game with that effort, considering how bad they've been. Texas Tech, that effort might actually win the game if you get Tech from the Baylor game. So it's going to depend on which team shows up across the field. And it probably beats West Virginia too. So I think they're pretty lucky that their schedule is not very hard the rest of the way. But we've seen moments of Oklahoma being able to play well. It's just they haven't strung it all together, but luckily they're playing teams who I think actually have bigger problems than OU does the rest of the way, which is, I know it's not like the most positive way to spin it, but like it's about as positive as you can get right now.
Defensively, I think for me, Josh Neighbors, by the way, of Locked On Big 12, the Sirius XM Big 12 Today show as well, hanging out with us here today on Locked On Sooners. For me, one of the things that I keep harping on, Josh, is just show me some legitimate, tangible improvement defensively the rest of the way. Where are you at with Oklahoma on that front? I mean, is that the biggest goal for the Oklahoma Sooners the remainder of this season? We can talk about, hey, they finished 8-4 and all of a sudden, bowl win, now you're 9-4. And it's amazing, right? One thing I keep saying on this show, it's amazing how much different. Sun's a little brighter, right? Weather's a little nicer when you just find a way to start winning football games. But just big picture for Oklahoma, outside of the obvious, which is, win out the rest of your schedule here. I mean, is it as simple as play better defensively and Sooner fans can have some hope moving forward?
Well, I guess you've been more in tune this than I have. Like the Danny Stutzman thing is, I think, a really interesting inflection point, right? Because we're talking about like how receptive are these players being to how they're coached. And that is really important thing because, and it looked like Steve Sarkisian, we saw it last week or last year with the Bo Davis video, right? I mean, just letting the guys have it on the bus. And they told us there'd be a lot of roster turnover, and there has been. And like, I think you can see it. I mean, they're 7-point favorite against number 4 team in the country this week at home. I think they also have had some results this year that show you like things are turning around a little bit, even though there's still a touch of that DNA from last year's team left in this year's team. Like we've seen how much things can turn. So I mean, I'm not saying Danny Stutzman's going to transfer, but you have to ask yourself, like is this clicking? Is this group clicking with these coaches? And especially on defense, the answer is no at all, especially in that run game. I mean, it's funny because we talk so much about like how physical the practices were, right? The discussion about how things were getting ratcheted up in camp, and OU was doing things now that they hadn't been doing in the past. And it's not showing up on the field at all. I mean, they're not the tougher team most of the time. Baylor, you knew they were going to run the football all over them, and they did it easily. They're the worst rushing defense in the league, and considering they're Oklahoma and the type of player they should be able to recruit up front, it's just, I mean, I think it's unacceptable is probably the right word to use. I've heard that used. So I don't know if you can turn that around in 3 games. And if we're talking about stuff like that, this Danny Stutzman comment, like it doesn't seem like the players are picking up on stuff that can help them turn it around in those 3 games. And the offense has been up and down. I mean, I think that's a fair thing to say. Eric Gray has been awesome this year. I think he's really been one of the bright spots for them. Gabriel's been inconsistent. And look, I mean, I think that, he gets injured this year. He's coming off an injury last year. That's there. So I think with Lebby, and if you get Lebby for a second year, which I still don't believe is a guarantee. I mean, you never know what kind of smaller job come open if he wants to take that. But if you do get year 2 of Lebby, which I expect they will, I think some of that stuff would sink in a bit more, and that would improve moving forward. But the defense is really where I think all the eyes are on, because Alex Grinch Those defenses weren't good enough. They put a lot of guys in the league last year, but they were not good enough in performance. You think BV and some things just get better. They haven't at all, which is the big surprise.
It has been. Yeah, I mean, that's been the puzzling thing for Oklahoma. And the Danny Stutzman comments, I'm kind of torn between Danny Stutzman's a little bit of a joker, right? And does he just not, is the message just not sinking in?
Right.
I think that's a legitimate question to ask with Danny Stutzman and with Oklahoma. I tend to kind of lean a little bit more in your direction to where, if nothing else, some serious introspection needs to happen there with Danny Stutzman. And
it doesn't matter, too. Sorry, Coach. It doesn't matter. Like, even if he's a joker, like, look at the results of the field. They're clearly not sinking in at all. So even if he's joking, whatever else is being told to him clearly isn't sinking in, right? I mean.
Well, and look, here's something we talked about on the radio side today is, you could be the funniest guy in the world and it can be a joke, but it's not a joke to Sooner fans right now. And when they hear you basically say, so I'm one foot off, one step off, and the defense is the primary kryptonite for a lot of your problems, no, it ain't going to go over well. It's not going to be received well. So, man, it's in part a full-on mess in Norman, Oklahoma right now. You know where else it's a mess? West Virginia. And we got a coach that probably is, needs some wins to keep his gig. Let's talk about West Virginia real quick. Let me tell you, Underdog Fantasy, it's amazing. You got to check out Underdog Fantasy. Easy to play. It's available in over 30 states. Just pick between 2 and 5 players across any team. Not just your team. There's other options out there as well. Decide where they're going to finish, higher, lower. You pick one of the easiest fantasy to play games out there, and you can win cold, hard cash, ladies and gents, in a single game. So your deposit, they'll match that first deposit up to $100 free. So go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Find Underdog Fantasy app in the App Store, Google Play Store, you name it. And use our promo code Locked On. That's Locked On, one word. West Virginia, right? Let's, talking about messes. We got one mess traveling to another mess.
Yeah, it's not good.
West Virginia is a tough team to figure out, or maybe they're the most simple team to figure out, right? They're an absolute adjunct failure on the road, but in Morgantown, I think Oklahoma's got to be on red alert. This is going to be a tough game for them.
Yeah, I mean, West Virginia has not beaten Oklahoma yet, if I'm correct, right? That is not something that has occurred yet during their time in the Big 12.
Right.
I really don't think that's going to change, because the one thing OU just does not do well is stop the run. Well, you're looking at a rushing offense right now that in West Virginia, that's number 7 in the league. And they're only up there, Josh, because they're propped up by some stuff that was done earlier in the year, right? Because, and the big thing for them right now is there's no CJ Donaldson. I'm not sure if they have Tony Mathis this weekend either. And I mean, they don't have guys to like carry the football. There was Justin Johnson last week, and then they use Garrett Green, who's a backup quarterback, and will come in and do some things for them in the passing game. Like, I think he's been caught a couple passes. He'll run obviously to throw it a little bit. But they're not built to beat Oklahoma. They're not built to take advantage of OU in the way that Baylor was. And this kind of gets to the heart of what's going wrong at West Virginia right now is, and I've been saying this all year, they've got no identity at all. And they don't have the talent to form an identity. It feels like they don't have the coaching to do it either. Their defenses have been good in the past. I know this one's been banged up a little bit, but it's still not good at all. You think about, like, what does West Virginia football do well this year? You really can't point to anything. And they're hanging with Neil Brown right now because, number one, athletic director Shane Lyons believes in Neil Brown. And a lot of people like Neil Brown. Like, he is really well liked. But a lot of people like Matt Wells, right? And a lot of people like Gary Pat. Well, I'm not sure Gary Patterson is well liked, but you get the point, right? And, like, sure, they're great guys. A lot of these guys are, but this is cutthroat stuff. This is big money, big time college football. Like, I feel bad for the grad assistants. I'm not going to feel bad for the guys making $2, $3, $4, $5, $6 million a year to coach football. And look, Neil Brown get paid, I think, $16 million is a number if they fire him at the end of this season. Not going to feel bad for him. But to me, Josh, look at this. Like, the one thing must be they must not have the money to do it right now, because if you're talking about getting that recruiting class together, and they actually have a decent one this year, but trying to make sure you can retain some players in the roster, preventing that, you need to be in that mode pretty much now, and they're not. And so this makes me think that they might not have the money to pull the trigger right now. And that means good news for Neil Brown because he might get one more year to save his job. Or it's really bad news for West Virginia because as the conference changes, I don't think this is the right time to be in a downturn the way they are. So big picture for them, it's not looking good. And look, things can turn around in a flash. I mean, we saw what TCU did, but that roster's got nowhere near the talent that a TCU roster has. So it's a pretty bleak picture right now in Morgantown. I think it's fair to say the word is bleak for them. And it sucks to say because they're great fans, good fan base, but it's not looking good right now.
So JT Daniels, obviously that was the big transfer portal acquisition for West Virginia coming into the season. How has that experience gone for the Mountaineers? And what type of challenge does West Virginia present to Oklahoma with their offense?
So I think it's still really interesting that he picked West Virginia. I mean, I hate to be like this person because I don't know the kid at all, but like, I don't know if it was the right choice. You look at other places that he could have been, Oregon State and Missouri, and I think he could have been really good. I mean, I'm wearing my Missouri shirt today, but I think he could have been really good at Mizzou. I think he would have been really good at Oregon State too. Like they've got a better passing than they had in years past, and actually they need help the quarterback spot. That's what they need the most of. The influence of Graham Harrell has the play calling's been a whole thing. Like Neil Brown not giving that up and then trying to see what Graham Harrell can do with that. It's just not clicked for them at all. The one game where it really clicked was against Virginia Tech on the road at night. I thought was one of their best performances. And then the Baylor game, they clicked as well too. But you go back to that Virginia Tech game, and that was like the best version of them. They played pretty good defense, but they ran the football. It was so simple. And JT threw some darts. They protected pretty well, and they did a really good job. It's not been like that, though, for most of the year. I mean, he has been inconsistent for a lot of this season. He's not, he's completing 61% of his passes. He's made some bad decisions. He's thrown 8 interceptions. He's been sacked 14 times, and that's not all on the offensive line. They've had some games the offensive line has been fantastic. They've had some games they really have not been at all. So it has been just like their defense, an up and down year for them on the offense. And when I think about like, okay, what does Oklahoma's defense have to look out for? Usually if it's Baylor, we talk about the wide zone, right? And last week it was a bunch of guys who were getting the job done on the ground. This week, it's more of an individual thing, right? Don't let James or Ford Wheaton or Prather go crazy on you. And, I might be wrong here, but like you kind of take your chances with Justin Johnson having a career day, right? I mean, they've got one running back. Maybe they do more Garrett Green stuff, option run, so they can add that element. And that's what I would do if I was them. But I don't know if they're going to go that direction to throw off the timing of JT Daniels to go one guy in, one guy out. I don't know, but I would say it's those individual guys on the outside, because if you stop them, I mean, are we going to be talking about Justin Johnson, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, and Oklahoma loses? Like, I don't know if that's necessarily how this game's going to go down.
Okay, so one final question here for you, Josh, and thank you so much. Everybody, go check out Josh Neighbors over there with Locked On Big 12, or hey, right, Sirius XM. Check out Big 12 today as well. All of it. Get all of the Josh Neighbors content you can.
All of the Neighbors content.
That's right. That's right, my friends. What do you think? What's your score prediction on this game? How does this play out for Oklahoma and Morgantown?
Yeah, so what's the spread at right now? Do you have it off the top of your head? I looked earlier in the week and I completely forgot what it is. Is Oklahoma's a favorite, I believe, by what?
Yeah, just about a touchdown.
Yeah, touchdown favorite. So it's 8 points now. Yeah. I would lay the points. I would take Oklahoma just because, and look, I know West Virginia's kept games close in the road, but when you talk about, like, I picked Baylor last week because what does Baylor want to do? They want to run the ball. What does Oklahoma not do? Well, they don't stop the run well. And then you add 3 turnovers in. I didn't see that coming from Dylan Gabriel. And there you go. They all give him extra possessions. There was 10 points there. The margin towards the back part of that game was 10 points, until Oklahoma scored late. So there's not that matchup there. And then I would say the big thing for Oklahoma's offense, like, this is your chance to get back on track. This really is your chance to be, and I mean as a balanced offense, right? Run and the pass, not throwing 3 interceptions, taking care of the football, long sustained drives. I think the goal here is to make West Virginia make the most out of limited possessions if possible, because their offense is not very efficient. And so that, if you can limit the number of possessions of the game, I don't think you're going to see a situation where West Virginia, They can trade a little bit. We saw that with TCU. They did trade a bit, but we saw their offense stall out for good portions of that game too. If you limit possessions, kind of makes the stalling out period feel a little bit longer for them. And so I would say long scoring drives the big key for OU, and I think they can get those. And I think they win this game by I'll lay 8 points.
Josh, appreciate you, man. The Josh and Josh show on Locked On Sooners. Not bad at all. Hey, we'll do it again. Enjoy the football this weekend. MIZZOU, and we'll see you later.
Yes, there you go.
If you've thought about securing your home with home security but have been putting it off, you'll want to listen up. Right now, Locked On Sooners listeners can order the #1 rated SimpliSafe home security system for 50% off. That's right, 50% off. This is their biggest offer of the year, and you won't want to miss it. If you've ever had a package stolen off your front porch, or you maybe live out in the country and there's just not a lot of great security, there's not a lot of great lighting, maybe you just need a home security system for you, and you can get that over at SimpliSafe. Again, SimpliSafe has 24/7 monitoring agents that use SimpliSafe tech to help protect your home and your loved ones. SimpliSafe was named the best home security system of 2022 by U.S. News and World Report for the 3rd year in a row. That's right, 3 times in a row, the #1 home security system by U.S. News and World Support. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real, so you can get priority police response. SimpliSafe is whole home security with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and out, smarter ways to detect motion that alert you only when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that detect fires, floods, other threats to your home. And with all the rain that we get sometimes in Oklahoma, flooding is a real issue that could threaten your home. So go check out SimpliSafe at simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege, where you can get 50% off any new SimpliSafe system at simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege. This is their biggest discount of the year, so don't wait. You won't want to miss it. simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. All right, Josh, Oklahoma, West Virginia, the big game. Well, at least for Oklahoma fans of the week, it's the next game. It's an opportunity to prove to themselves and to the fan base and to the country that this Oklahoma team does have something to offer. It's going to be better as things move forward. So, Josh, as we look at the keys to the game here, offensively, what do you think Oklahoma has to do against this West Virginia defense to kind of get off to a good start and then really get the ball rolling to where they have a more consistent offensive attack than they did maybe against Baylor?
Well, I'll start big picture in this game, and I feel like I've said this a couple of times this season. I think, mentioned this before the Nebraska game, definitely did before the Iowa State game, and I feel the same way here about West Virginia for Oklahoma. Make a bad team look bad, right? I mean, I just look at some of the overall numbers for West Virginia. They're 100th nationally in total yardage allowed. So when you talk about keys to the game, okay, we can be generic. Don't turn it over the 3 times like you did, right? Don't throw the 3 interceptions like you did last week versus Baylor. I mean, that part's obvious. It's simple. But, man, more than anything, string drives together. Complimentary football seems like it's been something that Oklahoma's not done very well. But just if we even break it down, not from a complimentary football standpoint, John, but just from one side of the football standpoint, right? If you're off, offensively for Oklahoma, get into a rhythm. Don't have those 2 or 3 drives in a row where all of a sudden it's 4 plays punt, 3 and out, punt it away. I want to see Oklahoma in this game take care of the football and establish a rhythm that makes West Virginia look bad, right? This is not a good defense. Don't let them look that way.
Muted every time. On top of that, I want to see them air it out. This is the game going up against the 118th ranked pass defense. West Virginia allows 276 yards per game. We're deep enough into the schedule where that's a huge number. So Dylan Gabriel, Marvin Mims, Theo Weiss, Drake Stoops, Braden Willis, Jalil Farouk, whoever else you want, Gavin Freeman, this is the game. Let's air it out a little bit. We've been relying heavily on Eric Gray the last several weeks. Even though Dylan Gabriel had the 3 interceptions this week, this is going to be a huge bounce back performance from him. They may need to throw it a lot, depending on how well the Oklahoma defense plays against West Virginia's offense. But this is one where I'm looking forward to seeing maybe Dylan Gabriel and the Oklahoma passing attack to just really let loose, unleash hell, pardon the language, and kind of, what is it? Maximus from Gladiator, just go after it, like unleash the hordes and attack. I don't want to see a conservative game plan. I mean, against Baylor, against Iowa State, two really pretty good defenses, you had to, play a little bit close to the chest a little bit. Not anymore. Let it all hang out. You got a few games left in the season. Build toward the future. We talked about this a little bit on yesterday's show in that I want to see the young guys play. The other thing I want to see as we build towards the future is an offense that, as you mentioned, plays more consistent football throughout the game. But also I want to see that big threat attack come back. Like I want to see the big play threat come back. So I think this is going to be a great week for Dylan Gabriel to kind of get back on track. I mean, he's not going to have to force anything. I think West Virginia is going to allow some of those things, but if they kind of bide their time in the passing game, those big plays will come. But I think they're going to come, quite often in this matchup. Defensively, Josh, you can go big picture, you can go more specific. What do you think Oklahoma's got to do to slow down West Virginia and JT Daniels and Tony Mathis, an offense that's been pretty good at times, and other times you're like, what is this? What is this Graham Harrell that you're rolling out there?
Well, give yourself a chance to get off the field by forcing some third down and long situations, right? I mean, I think every single week we could have the same conversation, regardless of where West Virginia's at, which I want to say they're not very good running the football. I want to say they're maybe I guess not very good. I want to say they're 60th maybe nationally, somewhere within that wheelhouse, which, okay, I mean, I don't know that you would define that as bad, but you certainly wouldn't define it as exemplary, right? But I mean, for Oklahoma, it's always going to start right there right now. Given the problems that Oklahoma's had stopping the run, you have to start with, okay, if West Virginia decides they're going to run a little bit of option at you, how can you handle that? Can you be technique sound? Can you be gap sound? The Danny Stutzman thing has taken on a life of its own this week, right? Because he's sort of talking about, is it a big deal to, that one step difference? Well, show me that does matter this week versus West Virginia. I mean, it all starts stopping the run, man, with this defense.
Yeah, that's the thing that's been the biggest issue for this defense. 2 weeks ago against Iowa State, they were pretty good. Last week against Baylor, it was more of the same, more of what we saw against TCU in Kansas State and against Texas. And so that's got to be the thing that takes a bit of a better step. Danny Stutzman can talk about how the details don't or he kind of, I don't want to say he talked about the defense or the details not mattering, but he kind of shrugged it off almost he, making jokes about it or trying to spin it in a light that's kind of funny. It's hard to take that when you're watching him kind of get out of position at times, run through the wrong gap, leaving gaps wide open, or anybody on the defense really. And this is supposed to be kind of one of the quote unquote leaders of this team. Like everything matters. The details matter. And you can go to any job, any profession, like the details matter. The people who are really good at their job, the details matter. People in the NFL that are really good players, the details matter. The one step, it matters. And playing against West Virginia, a team that did ran for more than 200 yards against Baylor just a few weeks back in their 43-40 win in Morgantown, the details are going to matter. Tony Mathis is a good back. They're going to lean on the running game because JT Daniels has been so up and down this year. The offense has been so up and down. They're going to try and run the ball. That's going to be the straightest point or straightest direction to victory for West Virginia. Point A to point B for West Virginia, run the football. If Oklahoma isn't up to the task, it could be another long game for the defense. And I'm kind of, every week I go back and forth between, okay, I feel like Oklahoma's starting to prove something to me. I'm back in one of those situations where I feel like, well, maybe Oklahoma isn't going to be able to stop the run. So it's so much of this game, like, what is West Virginia? Are they going to be the team that beat Baylor 43-40? Are they going to be the team that only put up 14 points against Iowa State or got railroaded by Texas Tech? Like, what is this team and who's going to show up in Morgantown on Saturday? That's a big question. And I think you're right. Running the football or stopping the run is going to be huge. Getting off the field on third down, fourth down, because we know that this team is not good stopping fourth down attempts, doing all the little things well. I think if they can find some sort of pass rush, that'll be helpful. Obviously, that's not breaking news or anything like that. They got to win the turnover battle. Like if if Dylan Gabriel or the offense turns the ball over, the Oklahoma defense has to respond and get some turnovers of their own. So this is probably one of those games where I feel like I don't have a good handle on it because I don't know what West Virginia team we're going to get. Conversely, I don't necessarily know what Oklahoma team we're going to get. This is a team that has played such up and down football all year where, we get, a few good stops in a game and in a quarter. And then the next quarter, they go back to what they looked like early in the season in Big 12 play. We get one game that's pretty strong. And then the next game, it's okay. Where'd the defense go again? We're back to asking those questions. So as we get into predicting this football game that's going to be at 11 a.m. on Saturday, where are you headed? Oklahoma right now is -7.5 favorites on the road, going to Morgantown over the West Virginia Mountaineers. The over-under, according to BetOnline, is set at 68. So they're predicting another high-scoring game for Oklahoma and West Virginia. How do you lean on this one?
I can't pick Oklahoma to cover the spread right now. I do think somehow, some way they're going to probably by the wings of Dylan Gabriel in this offense, take a little bit better than they did. Obviously, a week ago when Gabriel was intercepted 3 times. I know we've hashed it out this week. The one's a tipped ball. The other one, was there a DPI? Okay, it wasn't called. You got a nod of approval right there on the YouTube side from one John Williams. But look, I think that Dylan Gabriel, Oklahoma, they have to take care of the football better. I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic that that's exactly what's going to happen. Really, the course of this season, you look at the numbers, like the quarterback comparison between these two, for example, John, 16 touchdowns, 4 picks for Dylan Gabriel, right? And I know that obviously you got to omit the fact that Gabriel didn't play for a quarter and a half throughout the season. So you can, cook that into the numbers, I guess, a little bit too, but whatever. JT Daniels, 13 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. This guy is more gettable and has been more gottable than Dylan Gabriel has got so far this season. So I expect that to continue like we saw versus Iowa State. Not that Oklahoma's particularly adept at turning people over or putting themselves in positions defensively where it's situations where you might force a turnover. I do think we're going to see a bad team in the Big 12 be kind of that at key moments on Saturday in West Virginia, right? Like we saw Oklahoma do to Iowa State where they got the 3 turnovers. So somehow, some way, by virtue of the fact that I just don't think West Virginia is very good, I'm going to take Oklahoma in a game that, yes, does see plenty of points. I'll take Oklahoma 37-31.
Yeah, I'm kind of the mind that Oklahoma does cover in this one, that it's kind of one of those bounce back performances like we saw against Kansas. I'm thinking it's going to be like a 10-point win where it's something like 44-34. They're going to hit the over. I just think the offense is going to be able to put up points. I do think they get aggressive. They're going to go for their own, 4th down situations at times, and they're going to convert. I think it's going to be one of those situations where they're hungry. They're hungry to erase kind of what happened against Baylor offensively, where, they had every chance to win that football game, but some key mistakes at times and, key penalties, just, and like we talked about, just kind of herky-jerky play throughout the game where it was like a couple good series here and then you go, more than a quarter without scoring, or or you have several turnovers that really hurt you, poor 4th down conversion. And I think the defense battles back. I think it's not great, but it's kind of like what we saw against Kansas. They give up points, they give up yards, but they make a few key stops in this game to make it a game where Oklahoma is able to kind of quote unquote run away with it and get it like a 10-point win. So I'm going something like 44-34. Oklahoma does give up a lot of rushing yards on the ground. We do hit the over on this, but I'm expecting a big game from Dylan Gabriel. I really am. 300 something passing yards, 3 touchdowns. I think this is going to be one of those kind of Theo Weiss moment games. He's kind of been quiet the last few weeks. We've seen Marvin Mims, we've seen Jaleel Farouk, Braden Willis had a big game as well. And so to me, I think it's going to be the Theo Weiss game where he kind of has not maybe a 100-yard game, but maybe like a 4 for 50 and a touchdown kind of a game. He kind of gets off the schneid a little bit. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you go check out Locked On Big 12 with our guy, Josh Neighbors. Always a great resource for Big 12 action. Great game coming up this weekend between TCU and Texas. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch as well. Big 12 title game implications, as well as the college football playoff game implications for the Horned Frogs. So a lot to watch in the Big 12 this week. We'll be back next week to break it all down for you, break down Oklahoma, West Virginia, as well as what happened in the conference on Locked On Sooners. So for Josh Helmer, I'm John Williams. We'll catch you then. Have a great weekend. Be safe. Hope you stay warm with the cold front coming in as well. Catch you then. Boomer Sooner.